First, I want to thank Point 10 for having me here and for the chance I had to listen to you speak. Sulabh is quite a fantastic organization. And it's not always interesting to talk about toilets and sanitation, but it is a great problem in the country. And one of the best ways to solve the country's problems is to solve this one. So it takes 40 years to make that happen, and it has. And I didn't get to hear you speak, sir, but I imagine I would have just as much to say for you. And I know Madhu and I know Mr. Joshi. It's also great to be at this building because it's a famous building, and every time I come it makes me feel like I'm in an important place. But that said, I want this to be helpful to you. So I would like to spend a few minutes talking about social enterprise. And English is okay? Not an issue? Otherwise I can try to mix some Gujarati and Hindi, but it might be comical. Today, we run a social enterprise called Sarvajal that Akash mentioned. It also happened to be fortunate that Akash spent some time with us. Basically, let me give you the genesis of Sarvajal. I'm not a water expert. None of the people working in our organization are water experts, right? But the reason we do this is very simple. In 60 years of India's existence, we have not been able to get clean water to villages, just like we've not been able to get clean toilets to villages. It's not a complex problem. Everyone who lives in Ahmedabad drinks clean water. You get clean water out of a machine, you go outside here, there's an aqua guard, people get clean water. And so if the technology exists and clean water is possible, why can we not get it to people? It's a question. That question is what bothered people like me. If we have the technology, we have communication ability, we know how to travel, we can build machines, whatever it might be, why can we not provide clean water to people? And it turns out that if you spend some time thinking about this, there's a whole bunch of complex issues with this. Number one, just also to recognize the social impact of clean water. The estimate is between 65% and 90% of all disease in India is waterborne. So forget making medicines for diarrhea or malaria or whatever it might be. If you want to solve the health burden for the country, the biggest and best way to do it is to solve the water problem. Simple as that. It is the best medicine out there. The second issue is that the model that we think about, if we live in a city, let's say we're here in Ahmedabad and we get water, we expect water to come through a pipeline. Okay? What is behind a pipeline? If you look at the river, there's 12 French wells in this city. They pump water out and they move it into a big tank, and that tank gets pumped all the way across the city, and every house or building gets some sort of pipe which water comes for 2 hours every day. It's a very, very complex system. Lots and lots of work. Lots of roads are dug up, pipelines are put in, those pipelines are connected, some new house comes, they connect another pipeline, and if you looked at if there was a pipeline map of Ahmedabad, if you looked at it, it would be very, very complicated. Hey. And when the road breaks and they dig it up, somebody digs the pipe by accident, sorry, they bind it up with some string or something, put it back together, that's fine. In the summertime, it's not an issue. In the wintertime, it's not an issue. When it starts raining, it becomes an issue. You know why? Because in the cracks of the roads, dirty water from the rain actually seeps into it, and where that pipe was broken, and there's rope there, some more it seeps into it, and the next day you have people with jaundice and typhoid. Okay. This idea, big central systems of tanks and pipelines and get it to everyone's house, makes sense for cities. Why does it make sense for cities? Because lots and lots of people live in a small amount of space. In rural areas, it doesn't make any sense. Hey, I want to give you one example of this as well. I had a chance to meet with the chief minister a few months ago to talk about this water project, and he gave me a very interesting fact here in Gujarat. It says, there's a pipeline from the Narmada Canal which reaches Kutch. Some of you guys may know this. A few years ago, they used to say this pipe is very big. Maruti 800 उसमें जा सकता है, इतना बड़ा पाइप है, right? शायद याद होगा. Anyone know कितना पैसा होता है पानी पहुंचाने के लिए? How much does it cost to get water to Kutch? Anyone have a guess? Per liter? Guess somebody. Fine, don't guess. Huh? It costs 14 rupees per liter. 14, 1-4, to get a bottle of water like this to Kutch through a pipeline. It's not cheap. In fact, it's cheaper to buy this bottle of water than to get water out of the pipe. There's a problem with that. Why should a gaon where there's 500 households build a big taki, pump it to the taki, then put a pipe, and then make sure each house, even if it's 8 kilometers this way and 3 kilometers that way, has a pipe? The country's growing. Tomorrow there's 500 villages, there may be 2,000 households. 2,000 households mein ghar banane ke liye kuch na kuch khodega. Those pipes will break. It doesn't make sense. So how do you solve that? That's the question, right? The question about social enterprise is, how do you solve a particular problem? Or if you're a little bit more creative, how do you create a solution that people may not have seen to improve life? Right? It's not always a problem that's obvious. To me, this is what defines social enterprise. Right? Social enterprise is not some business that also does some good. That's bakwas, in my opinion. Right? That's a sense of saying, okay, I want to do this, but so I'm popular and I'm trendy and whatever it might mean, so people like me and don't feel like I'm just out to make money. I'm doing some good also. Hey, forgive me for those that believe that's a good thing, but I don't feel like that's the real thing, right? Social problems in this country are problems because they're not easy to fix. That's the definition. Why is water still 60 years later not fixed? Why is sanitation still 60 years later not fixed? Why is helping farmers with information 60 years later still not fixed? It's not easy work. Hey, it's easy for me to take out of my paycheck 10% every month and give someone some money to feed them. That's easy. It's easy for me to go home and say, I have an extra pair of clothes, I've donated it today. It's easy for me to say, I sent someone a thank you note today that I would not have sent something otherwise. This is easy stuff. As people, we like easy stuff. It's not. Don't confuse yourself. That's not social enterprise. The first rule is what you're trying to solve has to be a difficult problem. Right? And I want that to be clear, because that should be the test. The test should be, is this really a problem? Or, if you're creating something, is what I'm doing going to be valuable if I put the effort in to people more than me? There are many examples of things like that. Right? I'm sure some of them have been talked about here. Right? The pay-and-use toilet system, for instance, so it was a creative idea. How do I keep the toilet clean? How do I make it self-sustainable? I may be able to get the money up front, but maybe this will work. Maybe people will find the value and they'll pay 1 rupee every time they use it, or 50 paisa, or whatever it is. And you create something. But you know what? You don't look back until 30 years later and you say, kya hua? Hey, you don't test it and say, oh, I'm not hitting my targets, these sorts of things. Same thing in water. So let me give you more examples of this thought process, right? Again, like I said, I wasn't looking at water. I was trying to, the team of people that we were working with were trying actually to solve an energy problem. We wanted to find out how to get electricity to people in villages. Same problem, right? Power plants are big plants built in Mundra and built here and built there, and you have all these lines going up and down and over the street and below the street and this type of thing, and people get electricity. What's the best way to solve that? Generate electricity closer to the house. Okay, so instead of sending